Hello everybody, it is me, Real American Politics, here today with a post-debate election prediction. Now this prediction video is going to be a little bit longer as people want me to explain my reasoning for each state more in depth, so buckle up kiddos, this is going to be a longer video. So people are furious that I put some states as safe like Iowa, Ohio in the last video, and I'm going to explain my margins for states like Iowa, Ohio, Texas, based on using exit polls from 2016 and 2018 and using results from 2016. So the first thing we have to do is we got to fill out the safe states. So first of all, safe Republican states. Alaska safe, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, the Dakotas. Everything Nebraska except Nebraska second. Kansas could get a little bit closer, but I truly think that Trump probably wins it by probably by a point less. But he still wins by a safe margin. Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana. The Deep South is safe. Nonsense on Mississippi's competitive is just nonsense. Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina. And that is the safe Republican states. I would put Maine second, but people are not happy with that for some odd reason. So now we got to do the safe Democrat states. California, Washington, Illinois, Maine's first, the Northeast, not Pennsylvania, the Northeast, and Hawaii. So this here is the battleground map per se. Now, not all of these are battlegrounds. For example, say like Virginia is not a battleground at all. But we're going to fill out the states that I think everyone could agree upon, districts we could agree upon. So first of all, we're going to start with Oregon. I think Trump could get a little bit closer, but I think it'll be safe Democrat. I mean, Biden, I think, did shoot himself in the foot in a lot of these states out in the West, especially after he said he does not support the Green New Deal in the debate. That's going to turn off a lot of Bernie bros in, like, Portland and Colorado, but I think it's just enough. It's not enough to push it to likely. I think Biden wins it probably by 9.5 to 10. So it's borderline safe. I'm just going to put it safe. Texas is likely Republican. I looked back on it, and people did make a good point that, Trump is not doing the best for Republican in Texas, but he still wins it probably by a likely margin. When you take a look at it, Trump's approval rating in Texas has gone up dramatically since he became president. He's going to do a little bit better in places like Tarrant County, but he may do a little bit worse in places like Austin, and it kind of counters that. I think Trump maybe does slightly better or slightly worse. I highly doubt it moves to the lead margin because this is a big thing I have to explain. In nearly every single poll that I've weighed, alright, again, that's when you take data from a poll and match up the actual demographics. Every single time, Texas is 8-9 points for Trump. That's why I'm saying that it's probably going to go to Trump by a likely margin. And that's not really disputed. People did say, oh, it's tilt. That's ridiculous, alright? Virginia, I think, is going to be a likely Democrat. When you take a look at it, the northern suburbs, they're going to break for Biden. And really, that's a state where just there's not enough numbers for Trump to do anything in that state. Likely Maine's 2nd district. I took a look at party registration in Maine. It does not look the best for Republicans, but I think that he's still going to win it probably by 8-9 points. Maine at large, probably a likely margin. Biggest thing is just Trump is slightly worse in Maine's 2nd, so that's why it's not lean margin. It's likely. The next state is probably Nebraska 2nd. I put that as probably lean. When you take a look at it, it went to Trump by, I believe, 1.5 points. And in 2018, it did vote right of the nation. So I think Trump could do probably a 0.5 point better. So that puts it to a lean margin. I really don't think Biden's going to win that district at all. I highly doubt he's going to win it. It just really depends on if turnout for Democrats is so favorable in that district that it does flip, but I don't really see it, so I'm going to put it as a lean margin. You could say tilt, but just for the sake of this video, I'm going to put it as lean. So now we got to discuss the rest of the states. There's some states that you may question, but I'm going to explain it. So the first state is Nevada. I hear that it's not safe blue, it's likely blue. That's ridiculous. I did, however, hear a good argument saying that it is lean blue. And that is a good point, but I still say it's going to be tilt blue. And here's why. For one, I do believe that Biden's going to collapse with Hispanic support this election. He already is. Based on every single poll we've seen so far, from like Spanish networks, Trump won the debate by a landslide with Hispanics and Spanish-speaking people. And that's going to help Trump big time in Nevada. But the biggest issue I see is the mail-in voting. That's going to hurt Trump big time. You're going to have a complete mess in Nevada with the mail-in voting. And when you do take a look at the exit polls of favorability of Trump, it was net negative 20 in 2016, but his approval rating did go to 48% of the population approve of him. And that kind of shows that his floor in Nevada is probably 47-46%. And when you take a look at the election results, Trump got 45.5%. I think he could push it up to 46.5%. But I don't know if it's enough to beat the Democrats. It's really going to determine if the third-party vote share is just as big as it is last time. I highly doubt that's going to happen. But for now, I believe that it is a tilt state. Arizona. This is a state that people are not going to be happy with at all. All right? But I took a look at the data, and when you weigh the polls, Trump is up by 2 points there. And when you also look at the exit polls, I'm not going to show you every single exit poll. I just want to show Nevada for that reason. That's the biggest one that got people mad. Trump is actually doing fairly well in Arizona, approval rating wise. I believe it's 49% approval rating in 2016 or 2018 exit polls, or 50%. That shows that his floor is 49%. And that pretty much gives Trump the edge, because Democrats have never gotten above this number, 45.5. So I think Trump is going to probably win the state by 2. And recent party registration data in Yuma, Maricopa, Pinal, and I believe Yavapai County, all 4 of them have been net Republicans since the beginning of 2020. In the past year or so, it's been very favorable. So really, the Democrats have not really gained the most that they could. It's still tightening between party registration, but I don't see it as enough to flip Maricopa. So I believe that Maricopa will stay Republican by a point and a half, and I believe that will give Trump the edge. So I believe Trump will win the state probably by 2. So I do push as a lean state. That is within the lean margin. So now we got Colorado. This is the state that I'm telling people is a very sleeper state, and here's why. Take a look at Laramie County. This is the bellwether of old bellwethers in the state of Colorado. Whoever wins Laramie County wins the state of Colorado pretty much. It predicted the exact margin of 2016. Spot on. And really, there was a lot of third-party vote there that seemingly would have went to Trump. So it's a county where I think Trump could probably get a little bit closer. I don't see Trump winning the state of Colorado at all. Just the numbers in a place like Denver is not favorable. But if he does better in a place like Adams, Arapahoe County, keep making Pablo trend red, in El Paso County, if he makes that trend even more Republican than it already is, he could get the state within 4 or 3. And I believe that's going to happen. That's why I'm saying it's a lean state. It's a state that is favorable to Trump-ish. There's a lot of Hispanic working class people there, and that's a big group that Trump's going to make a gain with. Same thing with New Mexico. It's kind of the same thing as Colorado. The working class Hispanics, I believe, are going to break for Trump at the end of the day. I don't know if it's enough to flip it, but I do believe that would push it to the lean margin. And remember, New Mexico is a state that Trump did surprisingly well in. And when you take out the third-party vote share, Trump probably gets a state within 2. So it's a very close race. So is Colorado. This nonsense that's likely Democrat is pushing it, but I can see why. You can see that Trump lost state by 5 and 8 in 2016. But it does, when you take a third-party vote share out, which they're probably going to go for Trump this time around, mostly because they're more, I guess you could say they just don't like Biden as much, because Biden pretty much anti-gun, anti-freedom of speech, that sort of stuff. That's a big thing for libertarians. who broke for Gary Johnson, especially New Mexico and Colorado. And plus, a lot of those Gary Johnson voters were Republicans that just didn't like Trump, who I think will break for Trump at the end of the day. I just don't see Biden doing that well with them. So now we got Iowa. Iowa is a state that people gave me a lot of flack for. And I do believe Republicans will win the state by likely margin. People gave me a lot of crap for it. I'm pushing it to likely. People did make a couple good points. But when you take a look at it, it's a very favorable place. Trump is probably going to improve in Scott. He's going to improve in Lynn County and Johnson County a little bit. He's going to improve in a place like Scott, and he's going to max out in Dubuque County and Winnebago County. And if he just maxes out the rural part of the state, the western half, he's going to win the state probably by a slightly wider margin, if not the same. And when you take a look at trends, it did vote heavily right of the nation in 2016. So I believe Iowa goes to Trump by 8 or 9 points. And you could say, but my polls. I'm telling you this for a fact. Democrats are not the majority of Iowa. It's Republicans who are the plurality of Iowa. Right now, it's probably R plus 6 or 7. We can take a look at inferred voters. It was R plus 3 last time. So don't listen to the polls. They're overweighting Democrats in every single poll in the Rust Belt. A lot of the legacy Dems, they're just oversampling it big time. Ohio, same deal. I'm not going to get into it. Pretty much Ohio, I think, is going to trend a little bit Republican. Yes, the polls are saying that Trump is down, I believe, 1 or 5 points in Ohio. But they're making this nonsense that Ohio is D plus, I believe, 3, they said. When in reality, it was R plus 3 last election. 2016. It was R plus 5 in 2018. And the projections are showing it's R plus 7 or R plus 8 in Ohio. Go watch People's Pundit's video on this. He explains it perfectly that it's R plus 8. If Biden was truly within the margin of error in that state, he would be campaigning there non-stop. Because if you win Ohio, that's basically checkmate for Donald Trump. Now, we got Georgia. I think Georgia goes to Trump by a lean margin. It's a state where I think that Trump could do a little bit better in the Atlanta area. And it really depends on how well Trump does in the southern part. If he does as well as he did, and maybe improve in places like Chatham County, which has Savannah in it, and just kind of max out the southern part, this part right here, and improve a little bit in the Atlanta suburbs, you probably see him win it by a slightly wider margin, but I do think that Trump wins it probably by the same margin as he did last time. The polls are nonsense. If Trump was doing that well with blacks in Ohio and African Americans and other minorities, he would be winning the state by 8 or 9. So that's nonsense. Florida, that I don't see that at all a race at this point. I see it as a lean state. When you take a look at it from 2016, if I can find it, here it is. Trump did fairly well in Florida. And when you weigh the polls, and even if you look at some of the unweighed polls, Trump is up by 3 or 4 in Florida. I think he's going to win the state by 2.5. And it's a state where Biden's not touching at all. So it's the same thing everywhere. The states he's not touching should be states that are competitive, but Biden just will not touch them at all. So I believe that Florida is kind of off the table for Biden. Trump wins it by 2.5. 3, I think, is his peak. And when you weigh the polls, he's up by 4 or 5 there. He's doing very well with Cuban voters. A lot better than he did in 2016. And doing very well with other Hispanics. North Carolina, it's a state that is surprisingly trending Republican. That may sound crazy, but Trump did make the state trend red in 2018. And party registration data in this part of the state right here is nothing but red. And this used to be a very Democrat part of the state, especially up here. Republicans are outpacing Democrats by a ridiculous margin up here. And I think Trump wins the state probably by a slightly wider margin. Probably 0.5 point more than he did last time. So now we got the Rust Belt. People are not going to be too happy. So we're going to start with Minnesota. This is the interesting state. This is where end of the day, it's one of those states where I really don't know. I look back on it, Trump is campaigning heavily there, and it's a state where I think Trump does win at the end of the day, but I'm going to leave it as a toss-up. I really don't know who's going to win Minnesota at the end of the day. It's a very close state, and really, it's so hard to tell what the turnout's going to be for Republicans, especially after the riots. So for now, I'm going to leave it a complete toss-up. I have no clue at all who's going to win Minnesota. I do believe, end of the day, Trump will win Wisconsin, however. And here's why. So, I am a Wisconsinite. And I'm saying this for a fact. Trump's going to do a lot better in Kenosha and Racine this time around. And do better in the WOW counties. This alone gives Trump the edge. Already. And then when you factor in, he's probably going to do maybe a little bit worse in places like Columbia and Sauk County, but a little bit better in places like Portage, which has always been Democrat, and a little bit better in these other southwestern parts of the state, like Grant County, Crawford, Vernon, and he's going to do a little bit better probably in Door County. When you add all this up, Trump wins the state probably by a slightly wider margin. And again, it could change. It absolutely could change at the end of the day. Trump may collapse in support in this part of the state. But again, when you take a look at the polls, they are completely missing this part of the state. And up here, this is the part of the state they are completely missing. They're only polling down here in the more urban parts, I guess you could say. They're missing places like Iron County, places like Vilas County, Price, Sawyer. These went by wide margins of Trump. And they're just missing them. And end of the day, I think Trump will win the state. Now we got Michigan. A recent Trafalgar poll came out and has Biden up, and the trajectory is Trump's going to win the state at the end of the day. I'm putting it as a toss-up right now. It's basically like Minnesota. I don't know the turnout that's going to happen in the Upper Peninsula. I don't know if Trump is going to do better in places like Detroit, if he's going to keep his margin in Macomb, which he may. I think he will. And it's a state where I really don't know. Now we got Pennsylvania. I think Biden's going to lose that state no matter what. He first said he's against fracking. Now he says he supports it. Now he's iffy on it. I think he's just either way. He's either going to get a lot of the Philly area not to vote for him, or he's just not going to get the western part of the state to vote for him. Not vote for him. So either way, it's a lose-lose, I think. So I think Trump will win the state, because if Pennsylvania was safe Democrat, Trump would not be spending anything there. But he's spending quite a bit of time and money there. And I believe Trump will win Pennsylvania at the end of the day. New Hampshire, this is a state where people got furious that I had as Republican. But when you take a look at it, this is the 2016 result. Clinton won it by less than 3,000 votes. And when you really think about it, if Trump just improves in some of these towns down here, like Hampton and Northampton, just improve in these parts right here, and a little bit better in the outskirts of Manchester and Concord, the numbers he just needs to improve in places like Pembroke County and Barrington County alone by like 500 votes each, and then just squeeze out some votes out here in the middle part of the state, which is fairly Trump. And he got it. And when you think about it, the colleges are out. And that's going to hurt turnout for younger votes. And I highly doubt that it's a state where I do think that Trump will win. End of the day, because just the turnout, I think, for younger votes will collapse in New Hampshire, especially with the colleges out. And just the numbers, he just needs to improve slightly in some of these. If he just improves like 100 votes in a lot of these counties, he wins. And that's why I'm saying that New Hampshire is tilting to Trump. Now, this is my current prediction. This is a revised prediction after I took a look more at data, and I made that video explaining my sorcery on this. I would put states like Ohio, Iowa as safe, but again, I see why people would say, that may be pushing it. But again, I'm just showing the evidence in places like Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Nevada, Arizona. And yeah, so really the two states I don't know after looking at is Minnesota and Michigan. I truly have no clue who's going to win these two states at all. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, hit the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends. Don't dislike Bomb. I put a lot more research into this video than the last one. It wasn't the best one, I admit, but I hope this redeems the other one. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.